Nora turned the key in the front latch until it settled with one quiet click. The shop beyond the glass had already gone dim, and the street outside held only the pale wash of early evening. She drew the bolt smooth and firm, then let her hand rest a moment on the cool metal before she turned away. She walked back through the darkened front room without hurry. The empty cases stood soft in shadow. Her shoes made almost no sound on the worn boards. Behind the counter the air still carried a faint sweetness from the day's bake, thinning now into the cooler quiet of after hours. At the doorway to the back room she reached for the single lamp that hung above the long table. The switch gave a small, familiar give under her fingers. Warm light pooled downward in a gentle circle, finding the scrubbed wood and the clean cloths that covered the waiting bowls. Everything else stayed comfortably dim. She stood for a breath and let the cool flower air settle around her. It smelled clean and dry, with the soft mineral note of good wheat left open to the night. Rain kept a soft steady time on the high window, beading and sliding in slow threads that caught the lamp's edge and then released it again. Nora stepped fully into the circle of light. She rested both palms on the table's grain. The wood felt smooth from years of the same work, still holding a trace of the day's warmth beneath its cool surface. She let her hands stay there until the quiet of the room matched the quiet in her shoulders. Along the table the bowls waited in a patient row, each one rounded under its cloth. She moved to the nearest and lifted the edge of the fabric just enough to see inside. The dough lay full and pale, its surface smooth from the last turn she had given it before locking the door. It did not need her yet. It would rest through the long night under the cloths, gathering its slow strength while the rain continued its soft work on the glass. She wondered, without any hurry at all, how that dough would feel when morning came, whether it would yield soft and ready under her fingers, or hold a firmer give after so many undisturbed hours. The thought sat lightly. There was nothing to solve and nothing to rush. She only held the question the way one holds a warm cup, letting it rest. Nora lowered the cloth again and smoothed it flat with the side of her hand. The fabric settled clean and even over the bowl's rim. She stood in the lamp circle with her palms once more near the wood, the open question resting as gently as the rain that kept its soft steady rhythm on the high window. Nora turned from the covered bowl and reached for the flour tin at the edge of the table. The lid lifted with a quiet scrape of metal on metal. She scooped by feel, letting the cool dry powder mound in the cup until her wrist knew the weight, then tipped each measure onto the scale. A light tap leveled the pale surface. Grain by grain the flour settled. When the dial rested true, she gathered the mound in both hands and let it slide into the large mixing bowl with a soft, continuous hush. Water waited in a jug beside the lamp. She poured it in a thin, even stream, watching the flour darken and gather. Yeast followed from a small jar, a measured pinch that disappeared into the wet. Her fingers moved without hurry, folding the mixture from the outer edge toward the center, drawing air into the mass with each slow turn. The dough grew softer under her palms. It took the lamplight and held a faint sheen. Between turns she rinsed her hands in the basin of cool water at the far end of the table. The water clouded lightly, then cleared as she wiped her fingers on a soft towel hung from a hook. The cloth smelled clean and faintly of soap. She returned to the dough and folded again, pressing and lifting, letting the mass stretch and ease back. The rain kept its soft steady rhythm on the high window, a quiet companion to the work of her hands. Time passed in the gentle repetition. The dough grew smooth and elastic, pulling away cleanly from the sides of the bowl. Nora gave it one last fold, then lifted the whole mass onto a floured tray and shaped it into a rounded form. She drew a clean cloth over it, smoothing the fabric until it lay even and still. The large batch was finished for the night. It would rest now under its covering, gathering strength while the lamp glowed and the room stayed warm. She set the tray aside and drew a smaller bowl nearer to the center of the table. The wood felt familiar under her wrists. Her hands hovered above the empty bowl, ready for the quieter batch meant for the morning window shelf. The large dough rested under its cloth. One small change of task waited still unfinished, and the rain continued its patient sound against the glass. Nora swept a thin veil of flour across a clean stretch of the table with the side of her palm. The pale dust settled into the grain of the wood and softened the light from the lamp. She reached for the smaller bowl and drew it fully into that quiet circle of warmth. Its lesser weight already changed the rhythm of her arms. Where the large batch had asked for a broader reach, this one settled easily between her wrists. She lifted the cloth from its rim and set it aside in a loose fold. Inside, the beginnings of dough waited, cooler and more compact than the mass now resting under its own covering. Nora tipped a measured scoop of flour into the bowl and watched it sink without haste. She added water in a thin stream, the surface darkening in slow rings. Yeast followed, a soft scatter that disappeared beneath her first turn of the spoon. The work that came next was smaller in every way. She folded with shorter motions, pressing lightly so the dough gathered itself without strain. Each turn asked less of her shoulders. Between folds she rinsed her fingertips in the cool basin and dried them on the towel that hung near the lamp. The air held the faint yeasty breath rising from both bowls at once, warm and plain and familiar. She paused once, palms resting open on the scrubbed wood, and listened. The soft steady rain on the high window kept its even measure, neither louder nor thinner than before. It marked the quiet without urgency. After a moment she returned to the dough, drawing it together until it felt smooth beneath her thumbs and began to pull cleanly from the sides of the bowl. When the mass held its shape, she dusted a narrow board and lifted a portion onto it. With the lightest pressure she shaped a few trial rounds, rolling each one beneath the curve of her hand until it sat round and even. They were smaller than the loaves that would fill the main trays, meant for the morning window shelf where the light would find them first. She felt the new scale of them, the way they fit the space between her fingers without filling it. Nora set the little rounds at the board's edge and drew a corner of clean cloth over them. The fabric settled softly, leaving only their gentle outlines. The remainder of the quiet batch still waited in the bowl, needing its full measure yet. She left it there under the lamp's steady glow, the large dough resting nearby, while the rain continued its patient sound against the glass and the room held its even warmth. Nora turned from the covered trial rounds and drew the scale a little nearer along the scrubbed wood. The remainder of the quiet batch waited in its bowl, cool and still. She meant to portion it now, piece by piece, so each small loaf would hold the same weight for the morning shelf. The metal plate caught the lamp's steady glow. Across it lay a thin uneven film of flour, settled from earlier scoops, pale along one edge and thinner toward the center. She brushed it away with the side of her hand. The powder felt cool and dry against her skin. She wiped her palm once on the soft towel and looked again. The plate shone cleaner, yet she decided the measure must stay true. She reached for the small sieve on the nearby shelf. The wire mesh rested light in her fingers. She spooned a little fresh flour into it and held the sieve above the empty plate. With a gentle shake she let the fine cool dust fall in an even veil under the lamp. It drifted slowly, catching the warm light, and settled into a smooth pale layer without mound or bare spot. The clean scent rose faintly, dry and quiet. She leveled the sifted flour with the straight edge of a wooden scraper, tapping the excess back into the bowl until the weight sat right. Then she began again, slower now. Each portion of the remaining dough was lifted with both hands, set on the plate, and checked against the mark. When one piece sat a little heavy, she pinched away a soft scrap and returned it to the bowl. When another felt light, she added a thin fold from the scrapings and waited for the scale to settle. Between weighings, she rinsed her fingertips in the cool water basin and dried them on the towel so no dampness would cling. The dough itself felt yielding and even, still elastic from the earlier shorter folds. She set each finished portion down in turn along the table's open stretch. The soft, steady rain on the high window kept its patient rhythm above her, a quiet companion to the small sounds of wood and metal and breath. One by one the pieces found their places. She brushed a last faint dusting from the plate's rim and moved the scale aside. The portions lay ready in a neat row, still unshaped, their pale surfaces smooth under the lamp. Nearby the sifted flour smelled clean and cool. Nora lifted the first portion into the hollow of her palms. The dough sat cool and yielding there, its surface still smooth from the careful weighing. She began to roll it with the simplest motion she knew, the plain round she had first been shown years ago for the morning shelf. Her thumbs pressed lightly at the base while her fingers turned the mass in a slow circle against the wood. The shape rose under her hands without effort. Something quiet and familiar settled into her wrists and the soft pads of her fingers, the same unhurried path the dough had always taken when she was still learning. Flour clung in a fine dust to her skin as the old ease returned, not summoned but simply present, moving through her the way breath moves through a resting body. She set the finished round on the floured board and reached for the next. Each portion met the same gentle press and turn. No seams to hide, no elaborate tuck, only the plain loaf that needed nothing more than patience and an even palm. The dough answered readily, elastic from its earlier folds, rounding into soft spheres that held their form under the lamp's warm circle. Between shapes she paused once to listen. The soft steady rain on the high window kept its patient rhythm above her, a steady hush against the glass while her hands continued their quiet work below. The yeasty air rose faintly from both bowls, cooler now, mingling with the clean scent of the sifted flour still resting nearby. One by one the rounds found their places. She arranged them in 2 short rows across the board, pale and even, their tops barely dusted where her fingers had last touched. When the last portion had taken its shape, she stepped back a moment and looked at the small gathering. This batch had never been a new task. It was only the old plain shape returning her hands to an ease she had carried all along, a familiar path home through the evening's slower measures. She drew a clean cloth from the shelf and settled it over the rows, tucking the edges with the same care she gave the larger tray. Both trays now rested under cloths, their doughs left to the long quiet of the night. The question of how they would feel after that rest remained soft and unanswered, waiting gently until morning light would find them again. Nora turned from the covered trays and faced the table once more. Flour still lay in thin pale tracks along the grain, and a few soft crumbs of dough clung where her palms had rested. She took a clean cloth dampened in the cool basin and began at the far edge, drawing it toward her in long calm strokes. The wood darkened for a moment under the wet path, then lightened as she wiped again, the grain rising clear and smooth beneath her hand. She worked without hurry, folding the cloth and turning it so that each pass stayed gentle. The damp cloth whispered faintly against the scrubbed surface. When one length of the table shone clean, she moved to the next, brushing the last of the white dust into her palm and tipping it into the scrap bowl. The warm lamp threw a low circle of light across the emptied board until only the honest lines of the wood remained. The scale sat at the corner, its plate still cool from the second sift. Nora rinsed it under a thin stream of water, turning the plate until every trace of flour left it bright and bare. She set it to drain on a folded towel and lifted the mixing bowls one after another. Cool water slid over the curves of each bowl. She turned them slowly, drying the outsides with soft pressure, then stacking them neatly on the shelf where they always waited. She rinsed her hands a final time and dried them on the same towel she had used all evening. The towel smelled faintly of wheat and clean cotton. She shook it once, hung it on its peg near the basin, and watched it settle into still folds. Nothing else needed washing. The scrap bowl she covered and set aside for morning. The shelves held only what belonged to the night. Outside, the soft steady rain kept its quiet measure on the high window. Nora paused and listened, her hands empty at her sides. The room held the lingering scent of flour and the warmer note of the wood table under the lamp's glow. Both trays rested under their cloths, the doughs left to their long rise without further touch. She stepped to the lamp and turned the knob until the light fell to a low amber circle. Shadows lengthened softly across the floor. For a breath longer she stood in that dimness, letting her eyes rest on the covered shapes, then twisted the switch fully off. Darkness took the room with a gentle completeness. The smell of wheat and warm wood remained. The rain continued without hurry against the glass. Inside, the doughs rested under cloth through the whole night, and nothing more was asked of anyone's hands. The earlier wonder of how they might feel by morning settled into simple patience, unanswered and unhurried, content to wait for light. The bakery held only quiet, cloth, and resting dough as the rain kept time toward sleep. All is still now, and the night keeps the dough until morning comes soft and slow.